Deconverted Man here, and it's fallacy count time again with who else but that aficionado of fallacies, Sye Ten Bruggencate, in the Refining Reason debate with Matt Dilla.
Hello, this is Deconverted Man. Is Outright Lie there?
Hello.
Yeah, I was trying to call Outright Lie.
Hey, yeah?
I don't think that this is Outright Lie. It seems I've got the wrong number somehow. I'm gonna hang up now.
Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Don't you hang up on me.
No, sorry. Hanging up now. Okay, so, on with the analysis.
Which reality? Yours or mine?
My reality and yours, that's whose.
What are you saying?
Leave her. Come back to Montana with me.
I can no more run away from her than I can run away from myself.
I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to face reality.
Whose reality? Yours or mine?
My reality and yours, that's whose.
What do you say?
Leave her. Come back to Montana with me.
I can no sooner run away from her than myself.
I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to face reality.
Whose reality? Yours or mine?
Know damn well what I'm saying.
Well, it seems to be the one we agree on. Don't you think it's a fallacy?
I have not. I missed the meeting, Matt. When did we agree on that reality?
I'm asking you now.
I have a reality where God exists. When was the meeting?
I'm not evidently in that reality, but I'm asking you now. Don't you believe that that's a fallacy?
So this is the propositions that Sye Ten Bruggencate is offering for us. That God is real, that God is the cause, root, and or reflection of logic, that logic is logical, sort of, and that God is immune from logical fallacies. But okay, so that sort of part in 3 is due to 4 because this creates a contradiction. So as long as God is put somewhere in your sentence, that sentence, I guess, becomes immune to critical analysis because it's free of logical fallacies, because God's involved. Except when it's not the right God, I guess. But then how do you know that it's the right God? Because you can't use logic to determine which God is right, since God is immune from logic. So you would need empirical evidence, which you don't have. So you would need a repeatable test, which you don't have. Well, you need special knowledge given to you by God, and since God is immune from logic, then it's okay for God to give you special knowledge. But how do you know that that's God? Well, because you do. But if it's a different God other than Sye Ten Bruggencate's God, then it was the wrong God. But how did he know that? Because he does. Because all the wonderful things logic does. In Sye Ten Bruggencate's system, logic is completely and utterly dead.
I can account for logical fallacies. I'm
It
asking how
doesn't
you
matter
account.
whether you think you can account for logical fallacies. Don't you believe that that's a fallacy?
No, I don't.
Okay. If you don't believe it's a fallacy, why is special pleading not a fallacy, and why is it considered to be a fallacy by every expert?
Well, the thing is that according to my reality or according to your reality?
Take your pick.
According to my reality,
reality,
it's not special pleading.
Well, that's not my question. According to your reality, is special pleading a fallacy?
Yes, it can be.
You just said you believed that you didn't believe that it was.
Well, I don't believe that what you said was special pleading.
No, I asked
believe.
you.
Okay, yes, it's a fallacy. I believe it's a fallacy.
So
yes.
now we spent all this time to get to the point that what we really disagree on is whether what you said is special pleading.
Right.
And by definition, I'd say that special pleading is when you say that we're going to use reason and the standards of reason in every case, but this one is special because it's God.
No, that's not. That's a different situation.
Time.
Okay.
See, because everyone knows that God exists.
Time's up.
That's time.
Please.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, but, my friends, logic is dead. It's been killed by Sye Ten Bruggencate. We've got special pleading of special pleading of special pleading times infinity. Because God's immune to logic, and because God's immune to logic, logic is dead now. Which means that you can say anything, and it would make sense, I guess. Catapult pancakes equal God doesn't exist because of lobster. Meow, 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 meow.
Begins now.
I would say that, first of all, to get back to that point, fallacies, even in you've said too, that argument from authority is a logical fallacy. I admit that. However, it's not always a logical fallacy, because you have said that yourself. It's not a fallacy if you're appealing to the actual authority.
Yes.
Right. So there are instances when something is a logical fallacy and sometimes it isn't. Is that special pleading?
Well, those aren't the same things.
Is it special pleading to say that an argument from authority is sometimes a fallacy and sometimes it's not a fallacy?
Argument from authority is always a fallacy. The fallacy is defined as appealing to an authority that is not an authority.
So when you appeal to authority, then it's not an argument from...
If you simply cite an authority, that's not necessarily an appeal to authority fallacy. The name of the fallacy is appeal to authority. The definition of the fallacy is appealing to an authority who is not an authority.
And who gets to determine whether or not that's an authority?
We do. Humans do. We get to determine that. Oh my word, this is so irritating. Goodness gracious. This is a demonstration, from my point of view, this is a demonstration that Sye really hasn't looked at a logical textbook. Ever. Maybe he looked up the definitions at one point and tried to remember them, but I really am hard-pressed to think that Sye sat down and read through a logic book, or maybe he did, okay? But how can you ask this sort of thing, okay? I don't know, when is an appeal to authority? You know, come on! Come on! Okay, Matt Dillahunty, tell him what the thing is and who gets to decide which is going to be humans, which he's going to disagree with.
We do.
We do. Who's we?
Well, normally...
Because everybody, when they appeal to authority, will say, well, this is an authority.
Yes, what you do is you present the credentials and you demonstrate that the person, first of all, exists, and then you demonstrate that they are actually an expert in the field. And then after presenting their credentials, the individual gets to determine whether or not they're going to recognize that that person is authority. You can reject whatever authority you want.
We can question authority, and sometimes we must question authority. But of course, if we go to the Bible, that's the whole problem, is that humans questioned God. And that's what made everything bad. So if we just stop questioning God, everything will be just fine. Just obey God's commands without any questions. Be good little slaves, I mean sheep, and everything will be just fine. Why does a shepherd keep sheep? For their wool, and sometimes for slaughter. Which shepherd are we really following here, sheep? I'd rather be the goat. I considered myself a lost sheep for a while, but I don't want to be a sheep at all. I want to have the ability to say no. And if that dooms me forever, so be it. I will not bow to a tyrant. I will not give in to something that is amoral and that is beyond the ability of logic to examine. Both of these concepts would have to be true if Sye Ten Bruggencate's version of God is the actual God. It's immune from logic, therefore you could never use logic to argue for it. And it's amoral. It would have to be amoral because you can't use morals to judge it. Everything that it does is instantly okay because it has some nebulous reason that it makes it okay. And you can never know that reason. And that's fine because, again, God is immune to logic. And it will not provide and cannot seem to provide any empirical evidence or repeatable test of itself. So we have literally nothing to go on but faith. Just believe that it's true. But in Sye's case, it's just admit that you've always known that it was true. Which I can't do either of those. I can't just force myself to believe something is true, and I can't just give in to believing what I already know when I don't already know that. I can't do either of those. And even if I could do the first, I wouldn't do the first, because I'm not just going to trick myself into believing that something is true for no reason at all. And that's exactly what we're being given. No reason. There is no reason here. Reason is gone. We've killed it. It's dead. If there is a deity like Sye Ten Bruggencate posits, we need to find and figure a way to destroy it. Because it's nothing but trouble to the rest of humanity. And it's a sloppy God because only 33% some odd of humanity's okay to go, and even that percentage is probably off because they don't believe in the right sort of God, right? So, do we have to believe exactly the sort of God that Sye believes in? I don't know. I've heard this before, this special pleading on top of special pleading. I've heard it in Pentecostal churches. I've heard it in the Church of Christ. In the Pentecostal church that I went to, they sincerely believed that one had to speak with the gift of tongues. And if you didn't have the Holy Spirit. Well, pray as I might and try as I might, it wouldn't happen. I asked this guy, what's going on? He said, first you have to pretend that it's real. You have to, like, fake it for a while, then it becomes real eventually. What? Well, actually, it is a real phenomenon explained by natural phenomenon. But, nonetheless, it didn't make sense from a supernatural perspective. Why wouldn't God just take over my mouth and do it for me? And if it's true, then we've got to warn all the other Christians. We've got to do something. The pastor was like, let them deal with it. Wow, that's pretty cold. Went to a Church of Christ, and there they had a belief that you had to be baptized in a certain way, full immersion, and it had to be that you understood completely what baptism was about. If you didn't fully understand that, and understand that you had to fully understand that, then it didn't count. And I was like, well, okay, so the soldier that's dying on the battlefield that asked for last rites and they do the best they can with the baptism, they're screwed? Yep. And this pastor believed that his own father was in hell because his father wasn't the right sort of religion. He was in a different sort of Christianity. And again, why don't we tell them? Why don't we argue for this? Why can't we prove this to them? No answer, no explanation, no anything. This is what we're seeing here. We're seeing this cult-like mentality. I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and if you're not on board, you're wrong. It's no surprise that Hovind and company have latched on to Sye and Sye to them. He's perfect fit with them. Because here's another person that will just say, yes, we're right, and insist dogmatically that we're right, and we can put him on TV and have him say, I've won all these debates, ha 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 ha, we're right, of course we're right, we're going to keep being right, you guys have been wrong, you're going to continue to be wrong. It's a perfect fit. It's a dogmatic position. It is not a logically coherent position. Okay, so just want to make sure the point that I want to make is made. If Sye is right, then you can't use logic to argue for God because God is immune to logic.
Okay, when you said, Matt, that you could never confirm supernatural causation.
Yes.
What's your evidence of that?
We are blocked from confirming supernatural causation. I actually presented it, the reasons behind it. And that is that there is no demonstrated mechanism for linking supernatural causes to natural manifesting phenomena.
That's just an argument. I want the evidence. What's the evidence?
What's the evidence?
Yeah, that you can't prove supernatural causation. What's the evidence of that?
Well, the position is actually that we cannot yet demonstrate supernatural causation.
And what's your
evidence
Yeah.
is that we have not yet.
That's an argument from ignorance.
No, it's not, because
Sure it
I'm
is.
not asserting that it's necessarily impossible for us to ever, which is why I put maybe in what I was talking about, that maybe it's the case that we'll never be able to demonstrate supernatural causation. All we can say is that so far, no one has demonstrated that it is possible to demonstrate.
Now, is that true, or do you just believe that?
Both.
So it is true.
It's consistent with reality, which is my definition of truth.
Okay, which reality, Matt?
Reality.
Whose reality?
Well, as I talked about in my rebuttal, which I wrote ahead of time, You're confusing the map for the place. When you say whose reality, nobody's. It's not any individual's perception of reality. It is reality. So if you and I are sitting here, and evidently we can't agree, but if we could agree that we are in a shared reality, then reality are those things that we agree upon, that we can demonstrate reliably. But at a core level, because we can't demonstrate that we're not a brain in a vat, reality is the reality I experience. I just happen to be convinced and believe, for what I think are good reasons, that I'm sharing it with all these other people.
Right, but you have no basis for knowing that, though.
I didn't say I knew it, did I?
We have Sye Ten trying to muddy the water by confusing the audience, or trying to confuse them, confusing the bleep out of himself, I guess, on what logic fallacies are or are not, and other bizarreness during this information exchange dialogue. These malformed questions are containing premises that do not work. For example, when Sye asks, whose reality? This is a malformed question, because Sye has already asserted that everybody shares the reality where God exists. It is our perception of reality that might be different. And that's what Sye could have attacked, perhaps, is Matt's perception of reality, and said, your perception of reality is slightly off, but mine is straight on because something, something, something God. That's what he could have done. It still wouldn't work, but he could have done that instead of this. But these malformed questions don't get us anywhere, but it does allow Matt to explain further his position, which seems a lot more reasonable than Sye's. And then finally we have the irrelevant assertion that you can't account for this. Doesn't matter whether he can account for it or not. It's still the way it seems to be. We don't know how X works. We know that X works. That's all that really matters in trying to use X. I have no idea how my computer works. Well, I have some idea. Okay, I know a few things. But I don't know all of the mechanisms. All I need to know is how to use the thing. I don't need to know how it works. I don't have to account for the mechanics involved to be able to utilize it. And I think that that's really what the big problem is that Sye can't seem to comprehend, is you don't have to understand how a car functions to be able to drive a car well. Having that knowledge can help you. If you knew more about computers, you might be able to repair the computer. If you knew more about cars, maybe you could repair the car or identify before something goes wrong with it, etc. Okay, great, wonderful, beautiful, lovely, terrific. But you don't have to account for those things to be able to use those things. And similarly, we don't have to be able to account for reality to be in reality. We don't have to account for the rules of logic to use logic. It's just completely irrelevant.
I don't even know what you mean by no.
That's the absurdity of this. It's absolutely absurd to engage with somebody who wants to have a debate about truth, and you ask him how he knows something to be true, and he says, well, I don't claim to know anything to be true. It's absurd.
The debate is not about truth, you stupid little... The debate is on, is it reasonable to believe God exists? Not on truth. Oh, it's not, is it true that God, is it reasonable that God exists? The word true is not in the debate title. So this is just a red herring and irrelevant.
Why is it absurd to recognize, honestly, the limitations of that which has not yet been proved?
Because every word out of your mouth betrays your position. Because here's my question, Matt. You're about to utter sounds into the ether. You're about to formulate words, and you're about to speak them out here. On what basis do you assume that those words mean the same thing they did 5 seconds ago?
We have an irrelevant, red herring, malformed question. Wow, good job there. So, how do we know that the words that we say are going to have the same meaning a few seconds from now based on repeated evidence that the words continue to have the same meaning? And if we were unsure of that for some bizarre reason, I guess everybody could get a dictionary, but everybody might still understand those words differently. So I guess we wouldn't ever really... Oh, right. It's the problem of natural language, something that logic cannot answer. We recognize it's a problem, we put it on the shelf with the other problems, and we go, okay, there it is. We don't know what to do with it. Moving on. You know, we can't do anything about it, but we can define our words and attempt to communicate them better. But attempting to communicate is something that Sye doesn't seem to be very good at.
What makes you think I'm going to utter sounds into the ether?
You just did.
How do you know?
I just heard you.
How do you know?
Well, my question is my turn to ask questions.
No.
It's my turn to ask questions.
On
On what basis do you assume that the sounds you're about to make mean the same thing they did 5 seconds ago?
Well, first of all, the sounds don't have meaning. Words don't have meanings. They have usages. We share an understanding of a word. And so when I express something, this communication with other people is something that is very difficult. In many cases, we use words in different ways. And so I know that what I'm expressing, whether or not the individual I'm speaking to is going to have the same understanding, I don't know that absolutely certain, but I know it's a pretty good confidence within the realm of reality.
On what basis do you assume that you're a sound... Okay, let me put it this way. You're assuming the future is going to be like the past.
Yes.
On what basis do you do that? On what basis do you do that?
Generally, okay, we live our lives by inference and induction. We are under the general assumption that the future is going to be pretty much like the past. Not exactly like the past, and that is because we have this trend of that always happening.
So the future will be like the past because the future's been like the past in the past.
Well, yes, as long as you're not claiming
that's
that
a logical fallacy.
No, it's not, because I'm not asserting that there is absolutely no difference in the future. I'm saying that my position is that I believe, and I believe that I am rationally justified in believing, that the future is going to be pretty much like the past.
So if I said to you, you've just proven I'm never going to die because I've never died in the past, would that not be a logical fallacy?
No, because we know that people die.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm a lot like those other people except for one thing. I've never died.
And that's true for everybody right up until the point they have.
So, therefore, that being the case, on what basis do you assume that the future will be like the past?
Derp, derp, derp alert. Sorry, derp. Okay, so... No, it's not a logical fallacy, first and foremost. Let me get that clear. Neither of those things are logical fallacies. That the past informs us of the future might be similar to the past. Neither of those are in the realm of logic at all. Informal logic doesn't cover those subjects. Period. Not a thing that logic covers. That would be better addressed, say, in the philosophy of science, and or just philosophy in general, but not in the realm of informal logic. So let's get that clear, because it is evident by you going, isn't that a logical... No, it's not! It's not even in the realm! Let me take a quick detour here and do a reductio ad absurdum. I am not going to die from old age. I want you to prove that I'm lying. Okay, well, tons of logical fallacies, but that's basically what we're being presented here. So, if I happen to live longer than you do, then you won't know that I'm never going to not die from old age. We can't figure that out through personal observation. Let's just say I'm 1,000 years old now, and a couple of generations have passed, and people are still waiting for me to kick the bucket. At what point does proving the negative become... Well, guess what? It's always been impossible. Because I was going to say, at what point does it become impossible? Which is what essentially Sye is trying to get us to do here. Is say, well, but how? What's our evidence that it's always going to be true? This person is... In this case, I'm using myself as an example. So let's just say I'm 1 billion years old now, I've traveled the cosmos in the spaceship that humanity eventually has to develop to colonize the other planets, and I'm still around. People are like, dang, man. Well, I guess you are going to live longer than anyone else. But eventually, we'll run out of resources. Eventually, the universe will expire, and then I'll die, right? Well, but I didn't die from old age. That was the whole point, right? But what if just before the last human before I die, what if I die just before them? Then they're like, haha, yay, we were right all along, right? It just doesn't work like that. We would have some other methodology to show that this person was effectively immortal. Something in their blood or something in their DNA would indicate that they're not going to die from old age. We would have an independent way to verify that that was true. Other than that, the past informs us of the present, and the present can inform us of the future within a reasonable realm of certainty. There is room, of course, yes, for skepticism, but when you start to try to deconstruct that and go, well, but I haven't died yet, so I'm not going to die, and do stupid things like that where you're missing the point, it's when you start to do that that I realize that you don't really care about informal logic or how things work. You just want to go off into bizarro world.
I assume that in the future you will die.
That's not my question. If I drive past 1,000 red houses,
okay,
and somebody asks me what color is the next house going to be,
okay,
how can you answer that question?
You don't know what the next house is going to be.
Okay, but that's exactly your argument when you say the future is
not.
going to be like the past because of the past.
No, because that's an argument to analogy. Houses are not people, you stupid, idiotic piece of porcupine.
No, it's not, because the question is different. If you were to say, based on...
Special pleading.
No. Based on... Go ahead. It's good. It's fair.
Who in the world just clapped? That's what I want to know. Was it the Christians? Like the 4 or 5 Christians or something that clapped? Ah, yeah, he said something that kind of insulted him. Yay. Or was it like... like pathetic applause? I don't know. No, that's not special pleading. It is an argument to an analogy is what Matt should have said. But nonetheless, whatever. Moving on.
Based on the houses that you've seen, what would you predict the next house is going to be? That's the world we live in, a world where we are making predictions based on probabilities from our experience of the past. We are not declaring that we have tuned into the absolute reality and have divine revelation that the next house is going to be red and that we can't be wrong about that. It is called inference and induction for, well, there's a difference between induction and deduction. And induction is this process by which we make predictions about the future. Right. We are not making claims that we are certain or that it couldn't be different. We make predictions.
I'm going to bring it right down to the level that hopefully the most people can understand. Inductive reasoning is, I'm going to call it looking back at reasoning. Looking back at to prove future events. Okay, so looking back at reasoning. So my question to you is, how do you know that looking back at reasoning is valid? And what do? You look back.
I don't understand your question.
I mean, maybe they're too simple.
Probably.
Inductive reasoning is looking back at reasoning. That's what I'm going to call it. It's looking back to prove future events. So when I say prove that inductive reasoning is valid, what do? You look back. You're using it to prove it. And that's a vicious circle.
So the whole point about inductive reasoning is you can't prove that it's valid. See, this is when I talked about the logical absolutes and them being maximally certain, and those things which are directly derived from them are also maximally certain. That is deductive reasoning, things like mathematics and set theory. Inductive reasoning is something that you cannot demonstrate that is necessarily true.
Is logic absolute?
Is logic absolute? Is logic absolute? Is logic absolute? Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? And now it's time for Deconverted Man Loses It! Deconverted Man here. I've been thinking about the show that my friend / antagonist, Finite Atticus, puts on called A Very Public Spanking. And the fact is, as much as I love Finite Atticus, yet also hate him at the same time, I'm very conflicted with my emotions towards him. I love him because he's handsome, at least what we saw of him, yet I hate him because he's a turtleist. But it's not his fault, it's just the way that he was born. Or maybe he shows it, I'm not sure. Anyways, so, what was I saying? Oh, so his show's an outright lie. No. No. Anyways, his show's an outright lie because no one gets publicly spanked. And I mean, you know, come on, it's your show, and why would you do that to us? So here I am, Deconverted Man, and what I'd like to do is, any of you who have a webcam or a video camera or whatever, I want you to join me in propagating the new meme, spanking myself in public. And putting it on video and being like, hashtag Finite Atticus doesn't really spank people's live. We got to come up with something. I don't know, but anyway, just keep bombarding Finite Atticus with this until he finally comes on camera and spanks himself live, along with every one of his guests. Because until he does that, the show is a lie. Anyway, so here's me spanking myself. Here we go. There, I did it. This video is driving me insane. I mean, reality, is it real? Or is everyone just like recording it like somehow and then they'll be on a video in a Vegas of real life or something? I don't know. Log cabin syrup. And now, back to the video!
Because I've already conceded at the beginning that I'm not saying I'm absolutely certain about anything.
Are you absolutely certain that you're not absolutely certain about anything?
No, I'm maximally certain.
Maximally certain.
Which is what I started off with. Is that a problem, that we're not absolutely certain? Oh, it's your question.
You said logical absolutes exist in all possible worlds.
Yes.
How do you know that?
Not only do I not know that...
so you don't know anything you claim?
Well, I'm saying that I believe it, which is what
I said. So you don't know anything?
What I said...
Does knowledge have to be true?
Yes. Okay. I define knowledge in a specific way, and I pointed out that because we have a different definition of truth, we're going to have different understandings of knowledge. So under my definition of knowledge, do I know it? Yes. But under yours, do I know it?
Okay.
I don't think so.
Under your definition of knowledge, you know it. So you know it corresponds with reality.
So this is all natural language problem. Both people are using the same word in different ways. Perhaps we could have separated that by saying reality M for Matt, reality S for Sye, and say truth M, truth S, and things like this to separate them so we know which version we're using when. I don't know that Sye would have agreed to doing that, but it would have been more helpful for the audience and perhaps for the participants involved. But I think that Sye is trying to manipulate natural language to his advantage in some way, shape, or form to try to muddy the waters so that nobody understands what the bleep is going on, and it puts Matt into this pigeonhole where Sye can insist that you don't know anything is real, which isn't his position. It's just regarding what he defines as ultimate reality. Nobody can know that. That is essentially Matt's position. It has been his position from the start, and it is continuing to be his position. So all the questions that Sye is asking him are either irrelevant or malformed questions because he already has had the explanation, so he doesn't need to be asking these questions.
With ultimate reality or what you perceive to be real?
With the reality that I perceive. I don't know that that's not ultimate reality. I don't know anything about ultimate reality. That's a nonsensical term.
It's a nonsensical term.
Until somebody demonstrates that there's some reality other than the reality I experience, it's nonsensical.
Yeah, but you could be a brain in a vat saying that very thing.
And until you demonstrate that that's the case, I have no good reason to think it's true, and I'm still stuck dealing with the reality.
No good reason to think it's true, you assume that you're not. When you say no good reason to think it's true, you're assuming that you're not a brain in a vat. You're assuming that you've solved solipsism.
No, I'm not assuming
sure you
that
are.
I've solved it all. This is why I asked you the question before about whether or not something has been proved false. Does that mean it's true? I'm acknowledging that I cannot confirm that I'm not a brain in a vat.
Right.
But irrespective of whether I can confirm that I'm not a brain in a vat, I have no good reason to think I am, and I am stuck dealing with the reality that I experience where it appears that I'm not a brain in a vat.
You said that you cannot solve solipsism. You have no answer to hard solipsism. You've said that. But when you assume that there is no answer to hard solipsism, you're assuming that it's been solved.
No, I'm not.
Sure you are. Because you're reasoning outside of your own brain.
I don't know why this is so difficult for you to understand.
That's the time.
But when I... Oh, sorry. So, there was something you said a minute ago that I had previously said about the logical absolutes. And the reason I mentioned that is because I cleared that up in my rebuttal. When I said that in the past I've talked about them being absolute and that we can be absolutely certain of those. And I'm speaking in when I said absolute certainty within the epistemological foundations, of found-heretism. Now, the problem here is a big disconnect. And it's the reason why you find it frustrating and why I find it frustrating. I'm not frustrated, I expect it. The hard solipsism. That doesn't mean that I believe that hard solipsism is false, or that I've proved that it's false, or that I'm assuming that it's false. There is in any situation this establishment of the burden of proof. That you do not believe something until such time as it's been demonstrated to be true or likely true. Do you accept that?
Here's the problem, Matt. When you say there's a burden of proof, you're assuming that solipsism has been solved.
No, I'm not.
Sure you are. Is it true that I have a burden of proof?
Yes! Yes, you have the... Yes, it's a fallacy. Ah, it's a fallacy. It's still a fallacy.
Or do you just believe it?
That is irrelevant. You see, the thing is that you seem to only be able to see this from your worldview. You cannot.
Of course.
You cannot,
so do you.
No, I can. See, I can put on your worldview hypothetically in order to address something. You seem incapable of putting on mine for a moment to address something. And what I've said from the very beginning, and I could go back and read it, is I defined what I meant by truth. I acknowledge the presuppositions, and that what I mean by truth is that which conforms with reality, which is predicated on the foundation of the logical absolutes. And so when I say I believe something or I know something, that is the logical absolutes are the foundation upon which it rests.
But you can't account for logical absolutes. That's the problem.
And you keep coming back, as you just did, with you can't account for logical absolutes.
Right.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but neither can you. All you can do is claim that you can account for the logical absolutes. Please account for the logical absolutes.
That is the two-quote fallacy, two-quote way. To say, I can't, but either can you.
No, it's not a 2Q. Because he is not saying that we're both stuck in the same boat. He's not saying that, well, I can't account for it, but you can't account for it. He's saying nobody can account for it, but you seem to assert that you can account for it. Why not account for it then? What is the account of it? And then, what do we get as the answer to that? Oh, boy.
No, the thing is, you're saying that I can account for logical absolutes, but either can you.
No,
that's a
you are asserting that no one but you can account. No one can count for logical absolutes except for within your worldview, and I'm asking you to demonstrate that that's true.
Well, I have no problem doing that. Logical absolutes reflect the thinking of God.
Hello! Special knowledge! Special knowledge! Special knowledge! Special knowledge! Whew, yeah, let's have some special knowledge, and it's special pleading too, where we'll add a logical fallacy or two in there. Also appeal to authority that hasn't yet been established. Even if it was, it still would be an appeal to authority. Whew! You can't demonstrate it. That's not a demonstration. At best, it would be an argument, which isn't a demonstration, as you said before. So, be consistent, and you can't be, 'cause you don't know anything at all. You are a big bore. Yeah, you are a big bore. Woo! You are a big bore. Should leave the singing to Sye. 'Cause I don't really do it very well. I'm also only supposed to lose it once per video, so you'll excuse me if I just go a little bit loco. Woo! And now, back to the rest of the video. Woo!
That. Logical absolutes reflect the thinking of God. What? They reflect the thinking of God.
I'm done with my questions. We can go to the audience. Now we're good.
By his revelation, the same way you do. See, because we all appeal to logical absolutes.
I'm done with my
logical
question.
Logical absolutes. Oh, I'm not done with my answer.
Yes, you are. It's my time, and I cut.
No, I can answer.
Time belongs to me.
Deconverted angry. Deconverted smash. How am I talking without moving my mouth? I don't know, but I'm going to smash you now.
We do not have a logically coherent argument, and unless and until we do, we must continue to be skeptical of the conclusions. Talk precept to me. Talk precept to me. Talk precept to me.